everyone, it's Daryn Wood. So Black Panther isn't even out yet, and it's already charting to be another huge success for Marvel. It is an undisputable fact that the Marvel Cinematic Universe changed the game. They've dominated the box office for a decade, they place superheroes at the forefront of popular culture, and they've created a $13 billion franchise. Marvel has been riding this gravy train for 10 years now and shows no signs of stopping. So today, we're going to talk about how Marvel has maintained that successful momentum. So like always, I'm going to break it down into sections. The keys to Marvel's success are Kevin Feige, crossovers, momentum, and versatility. Kevin Feige has created an authentic, character-driven shared universe that consistently releases a steady stream of exciting, versatile movies. And first thing we need to talk about is Kevin Feige, because there would be no MCU without Kevin Feige. He has achieved this unprecedented success because he understands both industry and product. Because he went to film school and worked as a producer, he understands the movie industry and what it takes to be successful. But because he's loved comics and movies ever since he was a child, he has that deep respect for the art that only comes from being a true fan. He has both knowledge and passion. And his ambitious vision to bring the shared universe of comic books to tentpole blockbusters was only made possible because of that knowledge and passion. He has not only brought commercial and financial success to Disney and Marvel, but he's also created a superhero movie industry that actually cares about authenticity. He has masterfully spearheaded a studio that capitalizes on the passions and pockets of its dedicated fans, but also gives a fuck what they think. He has married corporate and consumer interests. For instance, Marvel uses its Disney partnership to exploit the fuck out of their characters for all their merchandising potential, but they also use that profitability to appease their shareholders and give their studio more freedom, the freedom to give their directors creative control and make movies they know their fans will approve of. Although Feige didn't officially take over as the head of Marvel Studios until after Iron Man released in 2008, he had a heavy hand in its creation, and he implemented important comic book elements while working on that movie that paved the way for the MCU's future success. Number one, character-driven stories, and number two, the crossovers. What has made Marvel comic books so successful for over half a century is their consistent release of character-driven stories that tie into a greater interconnected universe. Marvel has just always been good at characters. They've always had a knack for giving their superheroes personality and connecting with the reader. Kevin Feige understood that and was able to translate it into his movie universe. At that point in 2007, Marvel had given away all of its biggest characters like Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four and X-Men, so all they were left with was, as Kevin Feige put it, bottom of the barrel stuff, meaning Silver Age characters that weren't as popular or recognizable with the general public. So instead, they use good old character-driven storytelling to make Iron Man a household name by connecting him with the audience. Like, even if you went into the movie having no idea who Iron Man was, you left feeling like you knew him really well. But what really changed the game was the crossovers. Kevin Feige said the decision to put Nick Fury at the end of Iron Man started out just as a fun idea, like a fun little Easter egg for the die-hard fans. But after the movie premiered and he got the response, he was like, oh shit, like, this is what the people live for. Like, we gotta roll with this. After he took over as the head of Marvel Studios, Feige matched his knowledge with his ambition, and just days after Iron Man released, he announced the 4 following movies: Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America, and the Avengers. And even though no one really gave a fuck about his announcement, he knew that what made crossovers so exciting was the momentum of continuous releases. Comic books will try to bolster sales by bringing together a bunch of fan-favorite characters that would otherwise have no business really hanging out in a big event that several different series build towards. However, I think Kevin Feige realized that comic books rely on their audience's familiarity with their universe and their characters when they're telling these big, complex stories with connecting elements, and that wouldn't necessarily work for a movie audience. So instead, he took that idea of the shared universe and adapted it in a way that excited diehard fans, but also made it easy for the average moviegoer to follow along. And his understanding of what works for each medium and industry is an integral part of Marvel's success. And you can tell just by looking at how DC is handling their shared universe. Like, they're just plopping in characters out of nowhere, and while all of us comic book fans can follow along, the average viewer watches the movie and is like, well, who the fuck is that? You know, am I supposed to care about that character? I can't tell. Instead of relying on assumed familiarity, he instead insinuated the vastness of the universe by introducing common threads and introducing characters that would lead into the following movie. For instance, introducing Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. is the ultimate common thread, because they're like supernatural government. They're involved in everything. So it's something that may not necessarily play a huge role in the story, but it's something that all the stories have in common, you know? And in addition to that, Marvel used characters as connections, like how Iron Man 2 introduced Black Widow for the Avengers, and how Captain America worked with Tony Stark's dad, and how Falcon met Ant-Man for Civil War. It's like, you know, they plant little seeds that'll show up in the next movie, or like plant little eggs that remind you that you're still in the Marvel Universe. And then for the big whammy, the Infinity Stones were like the subtle hint at the greater event that was to come. But this kind of intricate connectivity requires an audience excitement that's only maintained through continuous momentum, which gets into our next reason why Marvel has been so successful: momentum. As the head of an independent studio, unlike, you know, Warner Brothers or Fox or Sony, Feige was able to take the risks needed to create the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, lining up all those movies one right after the other was risky as fuck. Like, usually you wait for the success of the movie you release before you start throwing your money into the next one, but Feige knew that he couldn't allow for these year-long pauses if he wanted to maintain a successful momentum that built towards a satisfying crossover. And Feige was well aware that if Thor or Captain America tanked, that it would like literally be the end of Marvel Studios, but he laid it out anyway. He understood that you kept people's interest by releasing a constant stream of individual stories that built towards a greater event. Like I said earlier, he took that page from the comic book industry. But again, he understood what makes it work. Like, compare the MCU to the X-Men movie franchise, which has been wildly successful for almost 20 years now, but you know, it's been a lot of ups and downs. But I think they differ because the X-Men movies took the comic book stories and then implemented like the blockbuster movie formula. Like, they had the main characters and their stories, and they built on those, and they either expanded through like prequels or sequels, but ultimately they kept their world confined to them. So there's not a lot of places you can go. So, like, there have been 11 X-Men movies in 18 years, releasing every 2 to 3 years. Compare that to Marvel, that's had like 20 movies in 10 years, releasing sometimes 2 or 3 times a year. And, you know, even though it's a crazy, reckless business model, what ended up happening is that even the bad movies can like piggyback off the success of the previous movie, or be like quickly forgiven by the success of the following movie. And you would think that with several MCU movies being released every year, that people would get sick of these fucking movies, but still, time and time again, they're pulling in these large audiences and record-breaking box office sales. Which brings us to the final reason why Marvel is so successful: versatility. Even though Marvel is dishing out an onslaught of superhero movies, they keep it interesting by not getting bogged down by redundancy. Kevin Feige has said since the very beginning that he wanted to create such diversity of content that you could release 4 Marvel films a year and it still wouldn't feel like overkill. And that's one thing I think the X-Men movies failed to do. The X-Men have such a rich, diverse collection of characters, but they always end up focusing on like the same 5 characters, so every time it just ends up being like the same story in a different setting. And I must say, Marvel's careful selection of their characters for their movies has been very effective. Iron Man was a great choice to kickstart their universe. He is a great modern-day superhero because he uses intelligence and technology as his superpower. He's not super recognizable, and he's not wearing spandex, so he doesn't alienate the unfamiliar audience. And even though he's not as recognizable as other characters, he's been a mainstay since the very beginning, and he is usually involved or leading every big storyline in the Marvel comic books. He's someone that people with no comic book experience can come and get into, which I think the MCU does a really good job of. Like, even if you don't know shit about comics, you leave the movie feeling like you understand the character and you know them very well. But Marvel uses their versatility to keep it fresh and keep it moving. After they kicked off with their 3 superhero scientist movies, we got the space opera about mythological gods. Then we got The Soldier, the hometown hero period piece. Then we got the superhero team up, which was a straight up fucking game changer. It showed that the successful culmination of a shared universe could be achieved on the big screen. And then just when it looked like sequels were a sign of Marvel going downhill, our hometown hero took us on a supernatural conspiracy thriller that redefined the superhero genre. Then we got an intergalactic band of misfits on a funky outer space adventure. Then we got the follow-up team-up, which was ambitious and fun, but a little exhausting, so it was nice that next we got to follow a charming, reformed criminal on a delightfully small-time adventure. And then, when you think it's gonna be just another Avengers romp, Civil War comes in with the hard fucking questions and challenges politics and ethics and has you going back and forth between both sides. Then just when you're getting exhausted from the hometown heroes and the scientists and the soldiers and the aliens, Marvel hits you with the magical side of the universe, which opens up a whole other realm of mystical superheroes. Then we got to see a truly teenage version of the hometown hero's journey, which was so cute. Then we got this funky, hilarious, buddy action hero movie. Then when you're like, damn, we've gone back in time, we've gone in space, we've walked amongst gods, we've tripped with magicians, where else can we go? Marvel's like, boom, a technological tribal paradise. Marvel uses their wide range of characters to keep their stories fresh, allowing them to really explore what works for the superhero movie industry and master it. But, they're not perfect. They've had their struggles as they paved the way for the shared universe industry. Initially, it was really hard for Marvel to make directors understand the notion of the shared sandbox, which led to very public splits with directors like Joss Whedon and Edgar Wright and Alan Taylor. And you can see that in movies like Iron Man 3 and Thor 2 and Age of Ultron. They were all struggling with the weight of trying to serve the greater cinematic universe. But Marvel has taken each misstep, learned from it, and continued to grow in new and exciting directions. They have both the luxury and burden of being an independent studio, so they get to solely focus on superhero films, but also that's all they got. So they have the freedom to do it right, but also they have to do it right. Their success has energized the superhero genre, and now we're seeing more and more of our favorite characters brought to life in both TV and movies, so all I have to say is thank you, Marvel, and keep doing what you're doing. Anyways, that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please share it with a friend and check out my other ones. Give me a like, give me a subscribe, leave a comment. And honestly, thank you guys so much for all the comments. I cannot even express how much I love discussing all this shit with you guys. Like, seriously, I have no other fucking friends to talk about this shit with, so thank you. I've been told I need to be more consistent and engaging. So from here on out, I'm going to post on the 1st of every month. So I'll probably post more, but at least you'll know on the 1st of every month there will always be a video. Also, follow me on Twitter so we can have more personal, in-depth discussions outside of this comment realm. But yeah, thanks for the support. This whole YouTube thing is a learning process, but I'm getting better at it, right? But yeah, stay tuned for my Black Panther video. That'll be out next week. Other than that, I will see you next time.